podcast by InnerPlant. We are having a very special episode of Croptastic coming direct from here in Galesburg, Illinois at the West Central FS Innovation Campus. This is our first ever field day. We're excited to welcome a bunch of special guests from John Deere, Syngenta, a bunch of people from the FS system, and we're here to show off our product in the field, our plants in the field. We have an imager bespoke for this event, and we're excited to give you a behind-the-scenes look at this special event. Central to our field day here in Galesburg, Illinois, is this plot we have at the West Central FS campus. This is where we plant our sensor plants here that respond to fungal infection as well as our always-on and always-off controls. We're super excited to be here for the field day to show this off for our partners. So this is one of our always-on plants that's always fluorescent, and we use this as a check on our detection equipment to make sure that we're detecting properly. This is planted alongside our other control that doesn't have a signal, and of course our sensor plants, which fluoresce when infected by fungus. In addition to demonstrating our InnerSoy sensors in the field, the day featured a keynote discussion with our partners about the medium and long-term potential of the InnerPlant's system, as well as our new Crop Voice Insights product rolling out for the 2025 growing season.
So just to set the stage, the idea behind InnerPlant was always not to become the technology at the front end, but enable other technologies to provide better services and offerings to farmers, and that's pretty much what you're seeing here. These are our partners, and we're going to have a discussion about how this all comes together. So, quick background, I'm Shelly from InnerPlant. I'm the founder and CEO of the company. Started this company about 6 years ago, and before that started other companies. So I don't come from ag, I just know more about businesses and setting up businesses, but we have a great team that knows a lot more about ag, and I think I can pass now, maybe, in good days. We are 35 or 36 full-time people in Davis, California. We just closed our Series B, so for-profit funding, and it was actually led by large farmers, which we're very excited about. We've raised $55 million to the company so far, and we have runway to really commercialize this technology. We're super excited about Crop Voice, which is the reason we're here today. And yeah, that's about InnerPlant, and if you can just do a quick introduction, and then we'll jump into the question.
Hey, good morning. My name is Dan Lightfried. I'm the Vice President of our corn and soybean production systems for John Deere. I've been with the company for about 27 years, grew up in Iowa, spent time all across the globe, including time in Europe, time in Australia, and time in South America. So excited to be here today. Exciting opportunity both with InnerPlant's, Syngenta, and GROWMARK coming forward, and I'm looking forward to sharing some thoughts on that.
Sorry. Hello everyone, I'm Warren Berger. I work for Syngenta. I'm responsible for our digital partnerships and strategic activities. I'm based in North Carolina, and I have global responsibility. I've had the opportunity to work with the InnerPlant team over the last year, as well as with John Deere and with GROWMARK. So I look forward to visiting with you all today.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Keith Lawson. I'm the Vice President of Seed at GROWMARK. So I would like to thank West Central and InnerPlant for everything, being here today, but I've been with GROWMARK for 9 years. I overlook everything within the seed division, whether it be corn, soybeans, wheat, field seeds, and seed treatment. So we look forward to the discussion today.
So we have some questions that we prepared, and we'll go through them, but really, please feel free to ask questions, and we'll have time for that as well. So Dan, let's start with you, or even before that, let's kind of set the stage of what it means with the InnerSoy sensors. And for those that didn't see the presentation last week, the concept behind our first offering is a plant that can communicate when there is a fungal stress, so when there's actually a fungal infection, which I think is even more powerful. And with that, there's a collaboration to bring all the pieces together. So if we have these crops that can communicate stress, what does the John Deere equipment, what are the opportunities with See and Spray and being able to read individual plant stress and act on it? What are the opportunities with Syngenta and fungicides to reformulate or create new products that are going to address that stress differently, better, early on? And then with GROWMARK, it's really about pulling all the, an FS system, pulling all those pieces together and creating the agronomical recommendations so that you can help support the farmers with those actions in the right time. So that's really the technologies coming together, and then maybe you can then elaborate a little bit more about what do you see as the opportunities around the signals and what can it enable within the Sainsbury system?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with rewinding back to about the 2017 timeframe when John Deere made an investment in an acquisition of Blue River Technology to start our journey towards See and Spray technology that's now commercialized. You know, we started with herbicides and trained the system to be able to recognize weeds from crop and only spray the weeds in order to significantly reduce herbicide application. As we started to think about follow-on applications like fungicides, nutrients, insecticides, etc., you know, one of the things that we need to be able to do is train the system for what to look for. And just about 2 years ago, maybe around 2 years ago, some of our company people started to get in contact with InnerPlant, and we recognized that there are unique signals that are being developed into the seed that ultimately make the plant here give it a voice, as the whole title behind us is, and being able to see fungus well before the naked eye can see it has significant opportunity. So we made not only an investment, but we've worked closely with Syngenta as a partner as well to say, how can the three of us together, coupled with the local retail market like GROWMARK, really bring this value to customers? So if the soybean's giving us the signal, how can we then say, okay, what's the right formulation to go to the field with it, and then ultimately only apply where we need to that fungicide in order to get the right response? That's really how we're working together to bring that to life. We still have work to do to make that actually scalable, but we're actually committed as a joint partnership to making that happen. So the fact that the signal or the plant itself has a voice is probably one of the best signals we can utilize inside of the See and Spray system in order to add value to customers. Yeah, and Shelley's question is this part of the future of expanding? We've always had the view from a John Deere See and Spray standpoint that start with herbicides, but the opportunity of fungicides, nutrients, insecticides, etc., go beyond that. And InnerPlant is part of our future in order to make fungicides to start and opportunities in other areas beyond that.
Thanks, Dan. Warren, so as we mentioned, there's opportunities around developing or reformulating products. How do you see that playing out, and what does Syngenta need to do within that to create those opportunities?
Yeah, so when you look at this type of technology, and I guess growing up on a family farm and then having done scouting when I first started with Syngenta and then field sales and agronomy, some of the challenges that I experienced anyway was that you'll go out to a field, it doesn't matter if it's a 10, 100, or a 500 acre field, walking in that Z pattern and trying to characterize in those 6 or 7 spots where you're doing scouting what's happening today and then what's going to be happening a week from now or 2 weeks from now. And so I've always been drawn to the technology of let's look at sensors, let's look at satellite, let's look at other types of innovation to try and cut down on the boots in the field and get more responsive to what the growers' needs were in that particular field, that particular growing season, that they're making money and they're protecting their crop. And having a father and a brother that are actively farming, doesn't matter what holiday, if it's over a hamburger or over a turkey, they're always telling me what they saw in the field and why didn't we know it sooner? Why didn't we know it earlier? Why did you give me the recommendation at the beginning of the season and why weren't you here to tell me that this needed to be done yesterday? This type of technology lets you look at those size fields at scale and look at each plant individually. So being able to get that type of feedback and power where you didn't have to pound a soil sensor in the field to measure moisture or potentially do hole punches in leaves to be able to look at nutrients and to see does it need more side dressing or less nitrogen for next year because it's already done. These types of feedback mechanisms have great promise, but ultimately it has to be in service and create value for the farmer. The farmer's got to make money with it, make better decisions, and we have to all be able to support them in those endeavors because each year is different. So when you look at it from a Syngenta perspective, when I take my personal hat off and put my Syngenta hat on, the types of opportunities that exist to identify those problems earlier, to potentially reduce the risk of chemical resistance, because we got to it earlier. We were able to protect it because you can't resurrect dead leaves or dead plants to help the farmer in his endeavors. Those are things that Syngenta is always going to be interested in, and why we're participating in this in partnership with the other players that are up here.
And just, I guess, I think at a high level I can share, what exactly do we do to make it come together? So we're actually working with the John Deere See and Spray cameras to figure out how to detect our signals. And then we're working with Syngenta to understand what are the implications of using different fungicides on the plants early on, and what does that do to the plant health and so on. Keith, to you. So how do you see the opportunities around getting this kind of information, or all the entire system or parts of it, in order to enable your retailers and to better support the farmers?
Yeah, I think it's a cooperative. I mean, we have our member owners such as West Central FS here today, and then our own retail. And our goal is to bring profitability not only to our members but also to the farmers that they serve every single day. I do see this as an opportunity. Our boots on the ground, our crop specialists are out there every single day, and they're building relationships. I kind of look at it as a business partner per se, as what they have with the farmers. However, I do see the technology that is bringing in today, that it is not going to replace our crop specialists by any means. That's extremely important, but it's another tool that's going to be there to help them be more efficient out in the field. I think on the retail side of things, when you look at like partnering here with InnerPlant and look at things, if you think about crop protection, and Warren, you mentioned it too, I mean, if we can get out there earlier and signal that, if we know where we need to go, it is going to make us a lot more efficient in our crop specialists. And I believe that will build a better business partner relationship with the farmers that they have today.
Yeah, and from the InnerPlant perspective, especially with Crop Voice, we are here to support the crop specialists. Obviously, like you said, it's not just to get the signal and then to go directly into action. It's to be able to make the scouting better, right? If we can tell you where the problems are, then you can go and utilize the time much better. And we're going to be here on the ground. So Gary and Reza have been tremendously working hard over the last few weeks and building a team here, and also visiting with a lot of you. And we're going to be here supporting this onboarding, because it's really critical to us that you understand the technology well and that we can support you providing this to farmers. We're not going to just drop this on you and assume that this is it, you're done, and we can go back. So touch base with them while you're here, but you're going to see a lot of InnerPlant's around here. Let's jump into maybe, I'll go to the last question first, because I think the next question is not as exciting. And if you have questions, please. So we talk about fungal pressure a lot because it's our first product concept. We can essentially communicate anything that the plant needs as a stress, but there's a what's interesting to the farmer, what's actionable, what's going to increase ROI aspect to it. So the things that come to mind are insect stress in soybeans, and then with corn it's insects, fungus, nitrogen deficiency. What are you guys excited about the most in, let's say after fungus and after we get this done and it's going to be super easy, it's all going to roll out. What are the next opportunities that you're most excited about? Maybe you can talk about it in more detail.
Yeah, I'll give a perspective. Again, as Shelley mentioned, starting with fungus in soybeans as our learning platform from which to scale, I think we're on a great path there. Obviously, to me, the holy grail from a knowledge standpoint is nitrogen, right? Nitrogen in corn. While at the same time that comes with a lot of implications. Being able to understand what's going on with nitrogen in corn and taking action on it is challenging. So I think we'll have to try to figure out, is there the right balance between what's really high value and hard to take action on versus what's maybe medium value and a farmer would take action on it almost immediately. But I think the path towards being able to better control and spoon feed the crop with nitrogen and corn, if all the tools are available to us to do that in real time, that would be likely the end all be all goal of this.
Yeah, I guess where my mind goes, there's a couple of different avenues here. I think there's one for the technology of today that we're talking about today with the soybeans. I don't think we know all of the ways that we can use this type of information yet. I mean, I think we're going to have a scenario that we have growers who don't realize they have a problem, and it isn't visibly seen, that we can see it in the field, that this is going to identify that there's an action that's needed here. I think there's going to be a case where sprayers and applications are running, and we're saying, okay, I need to go do A, B, and C, but a field's going to light up over here that we historically maybe said, we'll get to that because this is higher priority, and we realize, no, that's the higher priority. I need to do that one first before I do these other fields. So it's going to change maybe how we do some of our workflows. And I think there's a third piece, which is there's going to be maybe some crop rotation or things that we need to do that have other agronomic impacts that we don't know yet. And that's just with the technology of today. I think when you look at the other innovations that you can do with this, I think the nitrogen example is a great one. Personally, having walked corn that's in tassel trying to identify northern corn leaf blight, now knowing we've got tar spot that's showing up, if you had the ability to do tar spot and to look at those different fungal waves or showers that are coming through and to identify that, to know when the right time was to jump on it, I think those are all big opportunities. I think certainly south of here, getting into cotton, there's opportunities as well. So there's a number of cool things, innovative things that kind of bring the whole precision agriculture promise to life that this type of technology can be applied to. At least that's our aspiration, but there's work to do in partnership with all of you.
Well, there's not much more I need to say then, I guess, when it's over, but kind of reminds me a little bit when I think about it, if anybody's ever watched the movie Back to the Future, you know, if you could go back in time and actually know what's going to happen, we'd be in a lot better spot. And that's where I see InnerPlant is that actually we're going to get ahead of the game. And I think right now today we're sitting there, we're waiting for the infection to come. We start to see those results coming out, but then we act upon it. Now we're going to have that opportunity to know ahead of time of what's going to happen, and we can be able to go out and spray that and be a lot more proactive when you look at it. I would agree on the nitrogen piece. I think that's extremely important. I think that could have a major return on investment for our growers. If we could go out there early, we could recognize that we have a nitrogen deficiency or something, we will get the farmers will get a bigger return on their investment by doing that.
So just what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges over the next couple of years for the crop specialists and the farmers?
I'm sorry.
What do you think are going to be some of the biggest challenges over the next couple of years? I mean, because obviously we're getting into a tough period, and how can we help, really? How can technologies help?
Yeah, the biggest challenge that I see, I mean, we're all seeing it today with commodity prices continue to decline. And when I think about it on the retail side, as crop specialists, you're out there every day. And they're going to be challenged with some of those, so I work with farmers and showing the value. But what we have to do is be able to show our growers that the operations, the logistics, the products that we provide are the best products. And I think when you look at that the next few years, we will all be challenged with this, but we've been here before. And I think there's a lot of people that are in the industry that are new and probably haven't been here before, so we need to help coach and mentor them to be able to help get through this. But there's a lot of us that were sitting in this room too that have been through these times of commodity prices where they're at. Our farmers, they're strong, they always get through it, and you know, that's a backbone of what we look at on as a retail side of things. So that's probably the biggest challenge that I see today. I will say on the genetic side as a seed guy, I mean, it's amazing to me how many you know, all of the weather patterns that are going on today, and we continue to get these yields of 250 plus, you know, in different areas, depends on where we're at, but we are having some really good yield results, so I think it's helping us get through that.
Anyone else want to answer that?
Well said.
Well said.
Okay. That concludes my questions. Does anyone want to ask a question?
I'm curious, what's your vision on the progression of where you're going to go from here? Obviously, you've got it on small scale at this point in plots. How are you going to move forward? Are you going to do? Is it going to be like a? Oh shoot! I just lost the train of my thought. But or were you just going to put a few seeds in the bag, like a refuge type thing, or will you just use that, or is it going to be basically, or are you looking for it to be in every plant we plant in the next 5 years? What's your progression, or how you want to go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone heard it, right? So I'll give you the whole roadmap. We are starting with the plots, and the plots are networked to provide coverage. And the idea is to continuously get into every seed, and there's going to be stops along the way. So I think the next iteration is basically plots in farmers' fields or more, located closely, and then eventually getting into the entire bag of seed. I'd like to say in less than 5 years, but my team stresses out. But 27, I think we should have our first closed loop system, and then we still have to get the entire international approvals, which takes longer. But the whole point is continuously introducing the technology to the farmers, and making the resolution better as we expand into more and more data points, right? So every acre of soybeans, 140,000 opportunities to collect data. That's better than having the plots in certain locations. But we love this idea of not immediately showing up with a bag of seeds, because I think that would be a tough ask from the farmers. Even though we work with great genetics, at the end of the day, it's going to be, okay, you've never heard of this technology, you've never heard of this company, come replace your seeds. I don't know, how would you feel about that? But it's probably a big ask. So this way, they get to experience the technology. And we're going to do our experience plots, and farmers can come and see it, and then get it closer to them and closer to them. And by the time we come with the bag of seeds, I really hope that they'll ask for it, and they'll know what it is, and they'll ask, can I just have this in my entire field?
Is it a really difficult process to insert the genes? I assume you're inserting the genes to make this happen. I mean, is it something that you do quickly and replicate quickly?
Yeah, so we made the trait, right? And the trait is what you'll see in the InnerSoy. Everything is powered by the same thing, which is this genetic modification, the genes. From there, it's really about integration. So it took us about 3 years to make that first trait, which we're very proud of, because that's very fast. And we're set up well to continue to make more traits, meaning fungus and then insects in soybeans. But from there, once you have your event, that trait that you like, you still have to integrate into elite germplasm, and that takes time. And then you need yield trials, because the farmers are going to want to see that, and that takes time. And there's regulatory processes and field trials there, and that takes time. So it's not so much about the biotech aspect of it as everything else that you have to do to make sure that it's market ready.
Is the plan to make this exclusive to the blue and red bag, or is this to go bigger than that in all bags?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's inclusive today, and on the blue and red bag. We're out here today, we're looking at all the plots, and I mean, we have a very strong relationship with InnerPlant. I know myself, Dr. Bunning as well, has been working with InnerPlant, trying to understand what the future is going to look like. But I think when you look at it, there's going to have to be a collaboration, like you mentioned, with the trait integration with the Bayer, the Corteva, the Syngenta, the GDMs, or the MS Tech, or any of those companies. And then I think that it allows us to we want to focus on our genetics and bring the best yield possible to our growers, and then we enhance it with the right traits. And I think this is just another opportunity that, as this gets to that point, the regulatory approvals and everything, putting it into the like you said, the red and blue bag, the FS Vision, the high soy bag, is a great opportunity, and it will only help our crop specialists be a lot more successful in the fields.
What are you guys anticipating for like the ROI back to the farm gate?
Honestly, I think it'd be hard to answer that question now. We need to continue to do this years and refine that, but at the end of the day, the goal is, one, to enable farmers to have definitive information about a fungal infection so they can act in the right time. So get out to the field, get out to the right field first, get out in the right time. And that should optimize the yields on that acre, right? And then at the same time, the peace of mind of if there's no infection and there's nothing that you want to do, provide that information. So we want to optimize at every level, and my guess is, in general, is it's going to be different for every field, every farmer, every year. But what we've seen that I think is very compelling is fungicide data that shows, when you get that 3-4 bushel uplift, you're getting it as an average on the acres that had an uplift and the acres that didn't. And the ones that did got maybe 10-15 bushels for soybeans. So how do we really go there and maybe not do the ones that had something completely different and are not getting that value? that to me is the end game of all of it.
Any other questions?
So I guess I have a two-part question. One, as you look at all these different things you want to try and test for in the future, one, can you stack multiple of those together and be able to identify the different ones individually? And then number two, can you also tell like the different levels of infection or pressure based on the amount of fluorescence given off?
Yeah. So on the first one, yes, we look for different problems with different fluorescent proteins. So each one of them is technically a different color. And I do say it's not color, it's light. You can't see it, but it will show up in the certain color spectrum. So there is actually hundreds of fluorescent proteins, and we choose the top 3, 4, 5, and we can use those. And then we connect them to the genes that are only activated by that stress. So, by the way, the mechanism behind this is plants react to their environment by activating genes to protect themselves, and that's kind of the beauty. The plants know how to do this really well. They activate those genes within hours of the stress, and they're different depending on the problem, right? Because you don't want to activate the insect genes if you're fighting fungus off, it's not going to do anything. And the last part of it is that the plants have evolved over millennia to do this. So these pathways are very, very constant, they're not changing. So the idea is then connect to other pathways and create different signals for that. And we can do that within the same seed, and honestly over time we'll probably do it with one event. So it's just all of them in one, and we can cross it into the genetics. On the second question on the intensity, the early data shows that there is correlation, but I will say, if you just be honest here, if you look at an entire field and the signals come up within 2 days, it just happens relatively fast. And then with fungus, you're going to get a peak signal, the plant's fighting it off. It's not necessarily going to fight it off more or less, but what will happen is you can stop fighting it, right? You can get to the point where the plant's not infected anymore, and then that will be the resolution, and the signal will start to go away. So in the lab, we can see those differences. We actually see the peaking of the signal with the intensification, but I think in the field level, it's just going to be too big of a scale to get to that level.
As far as the regulatory process and getting approval for these genetics within the final seed, what kind of timeline do you see on that? And how soon would you be able to apply for that approval process and maybe see getting it approved for the global market?
Yeah, so it's a whole story. So it starts with the USDA, and the USDA is the only approval needed for the US market, which we got last year. The USDA has an incredible process and amazing scientists, and it's a very quick and streamlined and science-forward process. So that's behind us, and with that we can basically grow and sell soybeans within the US. So we want to get to the point where we do that in a closed-loop system, which means they have to stay locally and they have to be used and consumed locally. And it's an opportunity, but it's obviously not the big opportunity. In order to get to international approvals that include a few key countries like China and Europe, we have to do regulatory studies, and then I can tell you from beginning to end at that point, it's about 5 years on the most aggressive timelines, which we plan to try to beat, but that will start beginning of next year or next season. So then we still have a journey with that, but we won't be waiting until that is completely done until we get to market. We just have to be creative and strategic in the way that we get to market earlier.
So as a person that's survived the Starlink issues, how, in soybeans it's easier contained. When you get into the open pollinated or the pollen that's available and blows everywhere, how are we gonna, or how are you going to make sure that this doesn't escape the trial process and therefore we can't export anything anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a reason we started with soybean. There's like 5. This is one of them, purposefully. So I'm not sure that we'll follow the same track with corn, and I don't have the answer to tell you if we would or not. I'd have to study it a lot more. But soybeans are different, and with Starlink, it wasn't in a closed loop system. That concept was very different. So with a closed loop system, the reality is that you're going through, you're contracting with your specific farmers, and there's, the silos are separate, and the crushing facility is separate, and you're taking those beans somewhere, and the chances of them arriving to China are very, very low. Now, there's obviously things that could be done, I think, by the government too, to support the system being even more robust, but the chances are very low if you do this correctly, and we'll still do it very intentionally. But that's our goal. The goal is to follow all the guidelines, do everything the best, safest way, but not wait for essentially other countries that are not even here to tell us when and how American farmers can innovate.
As for your business model, how's a grower going to pay for this? I mean, is it going to come through a decal bag, a Pioneer bag, or does it come through you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so is this about like the long term or crop voice? I'm thinking, Reza, Gary, what should I focus on?
Long term.
Long term, okay. So long term, the idea is either we stack the trait on top of other traits, right, and then it becomes a trait fee, or we can create a seed offering with technology inside, and we have different partners, we can do different things, and we probably do both in reality, because once you have an event, you can work with a lot of partners to get it into their germplasm in various configurations that work out. Either way, there's going to be some premium, and I think partially because if we give it for free, it will not be valued, and that's very clear from feedback from farmers. So we want to make sure that there's a fair price that they can still make a lot of upside on, but it's not just, it's baked inside, don't worry about it. Hopefully you log into the data and see what's going on. We want them to log in and be intentional about it. And then with Crop Voice, the idea is we tag along, probably something similar where there is a small uplift or a small increase that the farmers will pay for it, but it will be part of some other acquisition. And to us, the seed is the best one because this is seed technology, right? So tagging it along to the seed sale makes a ton of sense, and then you just have access to that data.
Once you get this up to scale and I as a farmer can use this technology, how will the detection process work, like via satellite or drone, and how will I pay for that? Will it be an exclusive service I have to use through you to detect the InnerPlant?
Yeah. So the way we envision this is the cost is when the seed is sold, right? In some configuration, but that's where the premium comes in. And then we provide the satellite detection baked in, because we can, without detection, without that information, there's no value, right? This is kind of like software in that sense. It's not you plant the seed and the value is there. You plant the seed, it starts to grow, and then the value is dispersed throughout the season, and you have to actually interact with that seed. So satellites have been critical to us because it's really the best, easiest passive way to detect in the field. No one needs to go do anything. Those satellites are just flying over and we're getting those images. From a farmer perspective, they just have to scan the field or scan the bag before they plant it, so we know where to monitor, because we're not just monitoring acres for no reason. There's a cost in there, and we have our analysis. So that's how we actually understand what's going on. Is we have algorithms we're developing to figure out what's going on in that satellite image. We can use drones. Obviously, the See and Spray system is part of this. Is when you want to bring it down from the quarter acre to really the different segments of the field and all the way down to the plant level, and I do believe all these technologies will be available within the 10-year period, all the way down to the plant. That's a different offering to the farmer. So that's not completely included in the plant fee, but it will be, offered through a See and Spray collaboration, or if someone wants to use a drone, or you guys want to sell them a drone offering and there's value in that, great. Every one of these are basically higher sensitivity, right? You're getting more data, and I think some farmers will want that and some not, and it's probably depending on the farmer.
Okay, so I assume that the thought process is that the satellite would trigger an alert to the farmer, and then the See and Spray would go out and be able to detect within the field those pockets of disease or nutrient deficiency or whatever. So would there be formulations then of the fungicide that would target those more specific applications, maybe a higher rate, or something to really target those disease pockets if you're only spraying certain areas? Or will it just be the usual formulations?
Yeah, I guess everybody's looking at me, I have to take a shot at that one. So, based on our experience in working with See and Spray in the field, the assumption generally is that you'd still use the same rate on a per acre basis to be able to apply it. So if you were using Mirabis, you would still use Mirabis at the standard rate. If we get to the formulation question that you're asking, this is some of the things that we're looking at, is if you're going to be treating in this type of a pass, where you get a spore shower that comes in, you get initial light up in pockets, you go out and spray the pockets, another spore shower comes in, you're coming back in to spray again. What's the timing between the time the spore shower comes in until it lights up? And do you spray just the pocket, or do you spray a larger area, right? Or do you spray the entire field? And I think if you polled all four of us would probably have slightly different answers as to how we would approach it. And I think the trialing that we do over the next 4 or 5 years will help us get to what the right answer is, but I don't think it'll be a black and white answer one way or the other. I think there'll be different flavors based upon the scenario. I think for the active ingredients and the formulation piece, coming back to that, that's something we're trying to sort out, because you're needing something that has very strong curative property, and several of our products, Mirabis is a great example, it's got 4 or 5 products in there, some with reach back. Diseases having reach back is more difficult, and so will we continue to look on that? We're already looking on it. This would be a great use case for it, and we'll continue to have innovative products to try and do that. But we also all recognize that if a plant is attacked by a fungus and it drops leaves, or you lose photosynthesis in that leaf, you can't bring it back as well. So again, we'll continue to do the trials over the next 4 or 5 years, but I think there'll be a range of opportunities that are here. It won't just be a black and white answer. My answer, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree completely with you, Warren. The point that I wanted to make in addition to that is, I think that that's the beauty of this collaboration. Unlike in the past, where like the genetics would have done their trials, the crop protectants would have done their trials, the machine side would have done their trials, all independent. The fact that we're doing them all together gives us a collective system learning advantage to be able to come up with what the right path forward is on that. And so that's ultimately what spurred us to work together, rather than go, we're all aware of it, let's all work separate, and hopefully in the end the system will all work out. So I think that's fundamentally what's different about this collaboration versus a lot of other ones.
I have a question here. How often is the plant sensor information managed, and when? And then who owns the data as it comes eventually back to the grower?
How often does the... well, with satellite, it's daily imagery. And whether we get an image every day, unlikely, because there's clouds, but the goal would be about 3 images a week. Again, if you're in the field and you have a See and Spray system, you should be using it, right, and collecting information. And ideally even acting at the same time, and if you have a drone, there's additional points of time. But the sensor communicates, the plants communicate, and it's just a question of what granularity does the farmer want to capture the information, and we can provide that. To us, I think it's always the ownership is by the farmer, and we use the data in order to train the system for our algorithms. There's no other use case for us. So everything stays within the system. I think that's probably true for every partner here. What we think is very cool about this data is it becomes training data for algorithms, right? So if you're building a predictive model and you're integrating all of the different information that exists, right? Weather conditions, historical data, soil. I think everyone's familiar with those kind of models, and we're building them as well. What we then have is not just the prediction that there should be a fungal infection, but then fungal infection being validated. And you can then use that data alongside all the rest of the data that the farmer is willing to put into the system to make that model better. And the goal is really to every year make those models better so we can provide more and more farmer value through that. That's really the only reason for us to use that data.
So a question for all three of you. I'm sales rep for Syngenta. West Central, GROWMARK, member companies are all a pretty high custom application industry. Not a lot of farmer applied. And everybody knows there's not a lot of qualified people wanting to work in the business. Our workloads keep getting bigger, more strung out every year. I understand the technology piece and it's a timing issue. How are you going to incorporate that into the business model now when we can't hardly get things done timely?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer for it. There's no doubt labor shortages, and not just labor in general, but skilled labor and willing skilled labor in agriculture is a challenge. So I don't have a great answer for you other than to say we're trying to help incorporate these technologies, whether they be See and Spray or autonomous systems or other things, into the operations in order to make the timeliness of applications or the timeliness of a job more effective. It's definitely a challenge, and it's a challenge for all of us to solve. I know I don't have a definitive answer that says this is exactly how all of these technologies, including InnerPlant, will solve that challenge, but it's one we're going to have to collectively face as an industry.
Yeah, for me, the opportunity in this is with additional information, how can it help unlock some of the challenges that you gave? I gave the earlier comment about I could see different realities of how you'd use the technology. Field ABC was the plan to spray today, but I see this field over here now is lighting up. I need to go do this versus then do that, rather than vice versa. So I guess if you're using drones or if you're using satellite maps with NDVI and you're seeing hot spots that are in the field, for each of you that are professionals that are walking those fields, helping to manage that for a grower, if you then knew this is water or this is something else going in the field, but these fields, I know it's a disease infestation, how would that extra layer of information help you in manpower shortages, equipment shortages, etc., to manage your day or manage the fleet or manage the communication with the grower and consider that with weather? I look at all of this as being another layer of information that in my career in 30 plus years, we've always aspired to do, to have this type of visibility of individual plants and what's actually happening and have these types of data layers, but we've never been able to achieve at scale. Not without a whole lot of work, and certainly not on something that's of a field of any major size. This has the promise to do that over the next 4 or 5 years, which is another data layer. But that data layer has to be put in the hands of professionals that know what to do with it and how to take the trade-offs and how to be able to weigh the pros and cons, whether it's physical assets, weather, or spraying application or crop life cycle, crop stage, and to get to the ROI question that came up. So for me, I look at this as an opportunity for all of you and to provide that type of insight and value back to the grower.
Yeah, I kind of look at it, you mentioned labor shortage. I think this is a great opportunity for our crop specialists or the salespeople that are out there. They're trying to scout fields. And in this scenario, it's actually telling you, you need to go that field first, and you need to look at that, and you can scout that field. So I think it's going to help simplify the workload. It's, like I said before, we're not going to replace our crop specialists. We're not going to replace them. But this is an additional tool that's going to be able to help them and help their growers be more successful in the future. I look at some tools that like GROWMARK has, like the FS Agronomy app. I mean, that is one of our digital tools that we have today that does weather prediction. We got your markets and everything on that. But how do you integrate that? Someday, maybe down the road, you have InnerPlant that's going to go on there and say, hey, there's a signal that's going to be in there. We don't know what that's going to look like in the future, but technology is changing. I'm kind of dating myself, but I think back in the day, I remember when we used to get the cards out of the yield monitors, and then you'd send that in, and then you get all these maps sent to you about 6 to 8 weeks later. You remember those days? And so today, now everything is right there at our hands, and it's amazing But what do we do with those books? You know, we put them up on the shelf, right? But now those books is data that we've gathered to give this analytics as the next, you know, the digital future continues on. So.
Great answers. I hope one day someone's going to be like, remember when we used to send the tissue samples to the lab and wait 3 weeks?
Shelley, I got a question
Ben,
from a farmer's perspective. It's about your business model. I mean, you know, by the time I see you all up there, I got to pay my bank in money. Goodwill and traits and efficiency and all that doesn't pay my note at the bank. The price for a smart sprayers, it's hefty. And then there's subscription unlocks and per acre fees, and they need to reclaim their R&D costs. Seed sales folk like commissions, that's why they put on their matching shirts and go to work every day. And I just wonder how, you know, how do you plan to collect, you know, on this, and whether there'll be much left for me in the end after I get done paying everybody?
Well, I mean, I think we mentioned that this will be a premium of the seed, and ideally a small portion of what the seed value will be to you, right? But I will say what I can answer, because it's hard to give you all the details of something we're still figuring out, which is the long-term revenue model versus what we're launching today. Seed technology has upfront costs, but it doesn't have in-season costs, meaning we have to spend on R&D in order to make the trait, and it takes several years, and there's regulatory costs. But once it's in the seed, it just replicates into the next generation of seeds. So it's a great technology in that sense, because it doesn't require any additional investment from year to year, right? It's essentially all margin. So it gives us a lot of opportunity to not have to charge much. It's a sensor that's a plant that's living in the field, and there's a benefit of that, and we talk about that this year as well. If you think about all of the, we call them now synthetic sensors, right? Everything out there that's collecting information and you have to put out in the field, and another piece of hardware and more communication, networking. This is a plant and it grows and that's it, and with all of the remote sensing capabilities, becomes a very, very affordable solution to implement. So hopefully that convinced you.
Okay, we're just about at time. Are there any other questions before we close it out? Oh, here we go.
So you guys have talked a lot about the See and Spray ground rigs and technology. Is it still worth it for a grower or an FS member company or location if they don't have the See and Spray technology, if they're still on the older models or generations of sprayers?
Yeah, I mean, so the product that we're launching now, Crop Voice, is not a See and Spray compatible product. We're still working on that See and Spray model, both actually on the See and Spray part of it and getting into every seed. So I think, obviously, especially over the next few years, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to see the plants in action, provide the value at a much lower price point, because it is designed to be affordable and to provide that introduction into the system through Crop Voice. And then you'll have a lot of opportunities to, I'm assuming by the time we bring you the full solution, every one of you will have a See and Spray for weeds, and you'll know what that's about. And then the idea is to just unlock more and more through that same system. So, I mean, this is not for me to say, but I think that the same system should work for the different detection.
Yeah, I would just say, again, I think the key point that Shelley made earlier is resolution. So satellite detection gives you resolution into a field or into a sub area of the field. And if you don't have any other resolution as to the data, you know you have fungal pressure in that field, you just have to spray like you traditionally would with we'll call it a John Deere sprayer, we'll call it a non-See and Spray John Deere sprayer. You have to go blanket spray, right? If you have a See and Spray sprayer, what it allows you to do is to get to the next level of resolution where you save on fungicide where it's not needed. So it's really just about resolution. They're not completely coupled together where one won't work without the other. So I think that's probably the key thing to think about.
So thanks for joining us on this episode of Croptastic, directly from here in Galesburg, Illinois at the West Central FS Innovation Campus. Special thank you to our partners at GROWMARK and of course FS West Central who helped us organize this entire event. Many thanks to Richa Shepard and Sarah Lejeune for all their help and their team. If you have any comments for us, please feel free to leave those below this video, or you can reach out to us via LinkedIn or at Twitter at @inner_plant. As always, thanks for tuning in.